Good morning, y'all. I have been staring at the data for the past several hours, and I want to be honest with you about where I am starting this morning, because the word I keep coming back to when I look at the full picture of what is happening across this country right now is not just dangerous or extreme or record-breaking, even though all of those words are accurate. The word I keep coming back to is strange, and I use that word deliberately, because what is unfolding across the United States right now is not a weather pattern that fits neatly into the seasonal summer template that most people in most parts of the country have experienced before. This is a pattern that is doing things simultaneously that do not normally happen simultaneously. It is doing things in places where those things do not normally happen. And it is escalating fast, in a direction that the National Weather Service itself is now describing with language they reserve for truly extraordinary situations. The phrase the NWS used this week is significant and dangerous. Climate scientist Daniel Swain, one of the most respected voices in weather and climate science in the country, said of the heat wave that is now arriving this weekend that it looks pretty remarkable. When scientists who make a career of carefully measured language reach for words like remarkable and significant and dangerous about the same event at the same time, y'all, that is when you lean in and pay full attention. Let me tell you what is actually happening. The scale of what is coming. The numbers that define this pattern. Let me start with what the National Weather Service and the modeling community have confirmed as of this morning, because the numbers tell a story that I think has not been fully communicated in the mainstream coverage. Most of the lower 48 states are about to go under a heat dome that forecasters are describing as unusually large, unusually strong, and unusually long-lasting. All three of those qualities simultaneously, which is not the typical combination. Heat events are usually at least one of those things. This one is all three. Temperatures across the affected areas are expected to run 15 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in many locations. And critically, that departure from normal applies at night as well as during the day. The overnight departure from normal is the piece that I need you to understand, because it is the mechanism that makes a long-duration heat event categorically more dangerous than a short, intense one. When overnight temperatures are 15 to 25 degrees above normal, they do not recover to the range the human body needs to release accumulated heat stress. In Phoenix right now, the forecast shows temperatures not dropping below 110 degrees Fahrenheit for multiple consecutive days, not dropping below 110 overnight. In Southern California, temperatures are forecast to reach 117 degrees Fahrenheit by Saturday afternoon. 117. That is not a record that gets set every summer in Southern California. That is a temperature that most of the infrastructure, most of the housing stock, and most of the population of the affected communities was not designed or physiologically conditioned to absorb. Heat advisories are active as of this morning across North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, portions of Southern California, Colorado, and Arizona. That geographic spread from the northern plains all the way through the southwest and into the Pacific coast tells you something important about the spatial scale of what is bearing down on the country this weekend. And the NWS is explicit. The heat wave starts this weekend and lasts at least a week, with some areas expected to feel its effects potentially until the end of the month, the end of July. That is not a heat wave. That is a heat siege. Why this pattern is strange. The simultaneous multi-hazard picture. Here is where I want to slow down and explain why I used the word strange at the top of this forecast, because I think it captures something important that gets lost when you cover each individual hazard in isolation without stepping back and looking at what all of them together actually represent. At the same time that the western and central United States is entering what could become a historically significant heat event, with 117 degrees in Southern California and Phoenix refusing to drop below 110 overnight. The Storm Prediction Center's day 4 through 8. Convective outlook, issued at 4 in the morning Saturday, shows multiple ensemble systems supporting a favorable, severe weather environment being in place across New England on Tuesday. New England. While Southern California is at 117 degrees, New England is getting a severe weather setup by midweek. That is the two ends of the same atmospheric pattern expressing themselves simultaneously, the heat dome in the west and center producing its own downstream consequence in the form of an intense height gradient that sets up a severe weather corridor as far northeast as Maine and Vermont. At the same time as all of that, the SPC is also flagging severe thunderstorm activity today, right now, across portions of southern Illinois and western Kentucky, with 1 to 3 inches of rainfall per hour possible in some locations, flash flooding concerns through Saturday night, and flood watch is already in effect across that corridor. The Weather Talk blog for Southern Illinois is tracking flash flooding potential across the entire region from this afternoon through Saturday, with flood watch status already issued through late Saturday night. So you have simultaneously a historic heat event in the west running through the end of the month, severe storms and flash flooding in the Midwest right now today, and a severe weather corridor setting up for New England by Tuesday. 3 simultaneous hazards, 3 different regions, all driven by the same underlying blocked high-amplitude atmospheric pattern. That is what I mean by strange. That is the pattern escalating in every direction at once. The wildfire dimension, the west is already burning. Y'all, I have to spend real time on what is happening with wildfires across the interior west. Because the heat dome that is arriving this weekend is not arriving into a landscape that has had time to recover from the fire conditions of the past several weeks. It is arriving into a landscape that is already burning. Daniel Swain, who runs the Weather West analysis platform and is one of the most closely followed voices on Western United States weather and climate, described the situation explicitly this week. A serious and still escalating wildfire outbreak is underway across the interior west. It has already expanded beyond Nevada and Utah into western Colorado and Arizona and New Mexico. Extreme fire behavior and rapid spread have been widespread, and adverse fire weather conditions are expected to persist for 7 or more days. 7 or more days, y'all. That is a week plus of extreme fire weather, starting from a baseline where active fires are already burning across multiple states, before the heat dome even reaches its peak intensity. The specific atmospheric mechanism that the Weather West analysis flagged is worth understanding because it is unusual and it is dangerous. Along the western flank of what Swain described as a gigantic interior west-central United States ridge, monsoonal moisture is surging northwestward across California and the Great Basin. That sounds like a positive development. Monsoon moisture means humidity. Humidity means clouds. Clouds mean some relief from the fire risk. But here's the problem. In the early stages of a monsoon surge, the moisture arrives aloft before it arrives at the surface. What that means in practice is that you get thunderstorms, but thunderstorms that produce lightning without rain reaching the ground. Dry lightning. Dry lightning events over the fire-prone terrain of California and the Great Basin with the fuel conditions that currently exist across those landscapes are one of the most efficient fire ignition mechanisms in the western United States. Swain's assessment is that there's a good chance of dry lightning events in the California mountains this weekend that will probably produce at least a few wildfire ignitions. Over terrain, where the fuels have been drying out under weeks of above normal temperatures and below normal precipitation. And with a heat dome arriving that will push temperatures to 117 degrees by Saturday afternoon. If you live in a fire-prone community in California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, or New Mexico, I'm asking you right now to know your evacuation zone, know your evacuation route, and have your go bag ready. Not when you see smoke. Right now. Today. Because the combination of an already active wildfire season, dry lightning from the early monsoon surge, and a heat dome with 7+ days of extreme fire weather baked into it is the exact combination of conditions under which fire behavior can become uncontrollable and communities can find themselves with very little warning before an evacuation order becomes mandatory. The microburst threat, the hidden severe weather danger, in the desert. There's one more piece of this strange pattern that I want to make sure every community in the desert Southwest understands, because it is a hazard that is specific to the atmospheric conditions developing over Arizona and the Sonoran Desert right now, and that does not get discussed enough outside of local weather coverage. The SPC's convective analysis for the Phoenix area this morning specifically flagged conditions in the 12 UTC Phoenix upper air observation that concern me. Very steep, low to mid-level temperature lapse rates combined with an inverted V thermodynamic profile, which means the atmosphere is extremely dry through the mid-levels but has a moist layer at the surface, strongly favor evaporatively cool downdrafts when thunderstorms develop in the area. And the SPC is specific. Severe wind gusts of 60 to 80 miles per hour appear likely with the stronger microbursts, with storm activity expected to transition from individual cells into an outflow-dominant cluster during the evening hours, with greater prevalence of severe gusts at that time. Isolated hail may also occur with the stronger cores. For anyone who is not familiar with the Phoenix area severe weather meteorology, a microburst is a concentrated downburst of air from the base of a thunderstorm that hits the ground and spreads outward in all directions at high speed. In the desert southwest environment, where the air is extremely dry through a deep layer of the atmosphere, rain falling from a thunderstorm evaporates before it reaches the ground. But that evaporation cools and densifies the air dramatically, causing it to accelerate downward and hit the surface at speeds that can exceed 80 miles per hour in the most intense cases. Microbursts in the Phoenix area are notoriously dangerous for aviation and for anyone outdoors when they occur, and the atmospheric profile that the SPC is specifically calling out this morning, inverted V sounding, steep lapse rates, easterly mid-level flow at 20 knots, is the profile that produces the most intense microburst events in the Sonoran Desert climatology. If you are in the Phoenix metro area or the broader Sonoran Desert today, be aware that afternoon and evening thunderstorm development could produce sudden, violent microburst wind events with very little warning. If you see a thunderstorm developing to your north or northwest, or if you see a dark, wall-like curtain of precipitation approaching that does not appear to be reaching the ground, that is a dry microburst candidate, and you need to get inside a substantial structure immediately. The overnight heat threat. The most dangerous element of all, y'all. I want to come back to the overnight temperature story one more time before I close, because it is the element of this pattern that I believe is the most dangerous and the least understood by the general public. When Phoenix does not drop below 110 degrees overnight, when Southern California is at 117 by Saturday afternoon, when the overnight lows across the entire heat dome corridor are running 15 to 25 degrees above normal, the human body does not get the recovery time it needs. Core body temperature in people without access to air conditioning rises incrementally from day to day, not dramatically from one afternoon to the next, but incrementally, quietly, cumulatively, a little higher each morning, a little less recovered going into each new day of extreme heat. By day 4, 5, 6 of that cumulative stress without overnight recovery, the threshold for heat stroke drops sharply for even young, otherwise healthy people. And for the elderly, for infants, for people with cardiovascular disease, for outdoor workers, that threshold can be reached much sooner. This is the part of this pattern that the NWS is calling significant and dangerous, not just the peak afternoon temperatures, the failure of overnight recovery across a broad area for an extended period. Set up y'all call tonight before you go to sleep, because severe thunderstorm and tornado threats from the edge of this dome are going to be active overnight in portions of the Midwest and the Southeast. And a direct phone call to your specific number when a warning covers. Your exact location is what gets you up and moving to safety when your body desperately needs rest and your phone would otherwise let you sleep through it. $14.95 for a full year. Y'all, this pattern is strange, and it is escalating fast. 117 degrees in Southern California by Saturday. Phoenix not dropping below 110 overnight for multiple consecutive days. Heat advisories from North Dakota to Arizona. An already serious wildfire outbreak expanding across 5 western states with 7+ more days of adverse fire weather ahead. Dry lightning from the early monsoon surge, threatening new ignitions across California. Microbursts of 60 to 80 miles per hour in the Phoenix area today. Severe storms and flash flooding in the Midwest right now. And a severe weather corridor setting up for New England by Tuesday. All of it simultaneously. All of it driven by the same blocked high amplitude pattern. Know your hazard. Know your region. Take action today while you have time to take it calmly. Share this video with everyone in the West who needs to know what is coming their way this weekend. Subscribe and ring that bell. I love y'all. Stay safe out there.